All right, so we're diving deep today into Go Tell It on the Mountain by James Baldwin.
Yeah, it looks like you've got some excerpts right from the book itself
Oh, definitely.
and some background on Baldwin himself, too.
That's right. So a little bit of everything.
Nice.
This one, it's powerful stuff.
Oh, for sure.
Coming of age story, 1930s Harlem.
You really picked a good one.
I'm excited to dig into all the details with you, the setting, the family, and of course, John Grimes himself.
Yeah, Go Tell It on the Mountain. It really stands strong all on its own.
Right.
But I think what's really interesting is how it sort of lays the groundwork for a lot of the themes that Baldwin kept going back to in his later writing.
Interesting.
Like, if you get this book, it's almost like you get a key to unlocking the rest of his work.
Oh, I like that.
So as we go, we can kind of point out those connections.
Yeah.
And maybe recommend some other pieces by him you might like.
I'm into that. Let's do it.
Okay, sounds good.
So one thing that really struck me right away was how vivid Baldwin makes 1930s Harlem.
Oh, yeah.
You're right there with him.
Absolutely.
That Sunday morning scene where John's watching all these people heading home after Saturday night
Oh, yeah.
while his family's getting ready for church.
Mm-hmm.
It's like such a sharp contrast.
It's not just a description, though,
Right?
Baldwin's doing that on purpose, using the setting to show us the conflict that's already brewing inside John.
Interesting.
From page 1, he's got these two worlds pulling at him. That energy of the street, the excitement, maybe even a little danger.
Yeah.
And then the strictness of his family's religion.
Right.
We're all opposites.
Totally. And then there's that part where John talks about feeling different, having this power of thought. But even that is something his father sees as bad.
Ooh, interesting.
What do you make of that? Especially for a young guy like John who's figuring things out.
Yeah, I mean, feeling like you don't quite belong, that's something pretty much everyone goes through,
It's true. It's true.
But for John, it's even deeper than that.
Yeah.
He's already trying to figure out who he is,
Right.
good versus evil,
Right.
and how all that gets shaped by what's around him. So his curiosity, his ability to think for himself,
Right.
it almost becomes a problem because it goes against everything his father believes.
Makes sense. And that's where Elisha comes in, isn't it?
Yeah, this young preacher who is both a role model for John.
I was going to say, and kind of confusing for him, too.
And
man.
totally confusing for him, exactly.
Like, on the one hand, Elisha's super devout. He's passionate, even judgmental sometimes.
Yeah, definitely.
But you can also tell he's fighting his own battles,
Right.
his own desires.
It's like he makes you question that idea that faith is simple,
Oh, totally.
Baldwin's showing us is way more complicated than that.
Yeah.
It's messy, full of contradictions. Even someone like Elisha, who seems so devout, he struggles too.
Right.
It makes the whole religious experience feel relatable.
Yeah, I think so, too, even if you don't share John's specific beliefs.
Exactly.
Makes you think, right?
Yeah.
I'm also really curious about the things Elisha says to John,
Oh, like what?
especially about girls and sin and death, It feels like a hint at what's coming later.
Oh, I think you're definitely onto something.
Yeah.
Baldwin was so good at weaving these little moments together. It's like a bigger picture.
Yeah,
And those words, Elisha says, they stay with John.
they do.
They plant these seeds of doubt in his mind,
Interesting.
which keep growing as he questions everything.
Okay, so speaking of complicated, we have to talk about the family in this book,
Oh, yeah.
especially John and his father, Gabriel.
Ooh. Yeah.
I mean, so many passages just show how strict Gabriel is.
Right.
How he believes that religion is the only answer.
The only way.
Exactly. Do you remember when Roy complains about all the rules?
Oh, yeah. Totally relatable for anyone who's ever felt like their parents were, holding them back.
Oh, absolutely.
But it also shows you the pressure Gabriel feels.
As a father.
As a black father, especially back then where the world didn't offer a lot of options.
That's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. And John's resentment towards his father, it runs deep.
So deep.
Like he even imagines Gabriel on his deathbed.
Oh, wow.
It's more than just being a teenager.
It is.
It's like a glimpse into this generational trauma.
Yeah, that happens a lot in families, especially in communities that have been through so much.
It's true.
The pressure to survive, the expectations from society.
Yeah,
It can really mess up even the most loving relationships.
that's true. I'm really drawn to that part where John's dusting the mantelpiece.
Oh, yeah. What about it?
And Baldwin contrasts this nice homey motto, God bless our home, with this description of the metal serpent as, like, perpetually malevolent.
Ooh, yeah, that's a powerful image.
Right. It's so striking.
Yeah, it makes you feel like something's not quite right.
Totally.
Like under the surface of this perfect religious home,
Yeah.
there's something darker going on.
Hmm.
I think that serpent image, it comes up a lot for Baldwin.
It does.
It's like a symbol for all the hidden turmoil.
Right.
Not just for John's family, but
Yeah.
for the whole Black community at that time.
You know, I hadn't thought about it that way before,
Yeah,
but it totally makes sense.
it does.
And it ties back to John's own struggles,
Right.
which are so central to the story.
Right, exactly.
You know, he's fascinated by movies,
Oh, yeah.
especially those characters who are like the wicked ones,
Mm-hmm.
but he's also disturbed by what happens to them.
Of course.
It's like he's trying to figure out what it all means, you know?
He is. He's grappling with these big questions.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out what he sees in the world
Right.
fits with what he's been taught.
Exactly.
And at the same time, he wants a different life.
Yeah.
He dreams about having a horse, a big house, all these material things.
It's classic coming-of-age stuff.
It is.
You reject everything you know,
Right.
but you don't have anything to replace it with yet.
Exactly. And that all leads up to that incredible moment at the end of part 1.
Oh, yeah.
When John cries out, "What shall I do?"
So powerful.
It's like he's trapped between childhood and whatever comes next.
Right.
Desperate for some kind of guidance.
Totally. And then in part 2, we shift to the prayers of the saints.
Ooh, yeah, that's where things get really interesting. That's
Yeah.
where we get to see where John's parents are coming from.
I'm excited to dive into that.
Yeah, Gabriel and Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Their stories add a whole new level to the book.
Absolutely. It's like Baldwin is saying, hey, their actions make sense when you know their past.
Exactly. It's all
That
connected.
is.
Their traumas, their choices, it all comes into focus.
So before we jump into part 2, are there any other works by Baldwin you think our listeners should check out based on what we've talked about so far?
Definitely, given that they're interested in John's struggle with who he is, I think Notes of a Native Son would be a great next step. It's a collection of essays where Baldwin really digs into issues of race and identity in America. Themes that are all over Go Tell It on the Mountain, too.
Interesting.
So if they connect with that part of the story, I think they'd really appreciate it.
That's a great recommendation. All right, well, let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll dive into part 2, Prayers of the Saints.
Sounds good. So we're back and ready to unpack part 2.
Yeah, Prayers of the Saints, right.
Yeah.
This is where we get into John's parents' backstories.
Exactly. And I think it's really striking how Baldwin shows us how pain can just echo through generations.
Oh, yeah.
You know, take Florence, for instance. Her resentment toward Gabriel. It all goes back to when they were kids. He was always the favorite.
Right. Classic sibling rivalry stuff.
But Baldwin takes it further than that. He shows how that early experience created this feeling of unfairness for her. And it stuck with her, you know? Shaping how she interacts with Gabriel even as adults.
Makes sense. Like she can never quite shake that feeling of being overlooked.
Exactly. And then you've got Gabriel's conversion experience.
Oh, yeah. The scene in the river, right?
Yeah, he's literally wrestling with sin, trying to cleanse himself through this almost violent baptism.
It's intense.
It is. It's so raw, so physical.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder how much of Gabriel's strictness comes from that experience.
Right.
Like maybe that's why he believes so strongly that religion is the only way.
It's like his own personal struggle shaped his whole worldview.
It's true. Our own experiences with faith, good or bad, really influence how we see things.
For sure. And speaking of shaping worldviews, we can't ignore the whole thing with Gabriel and Esther.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, fair.
It's pretty classic hypocrisy, right?
Right. The gap between what people preach and what they actually do.
Especially in organized religion.
Exactly. It's definitely a complex situation.
It is. And the guilt that Gabriel carries from it. It affects his whole marriage with Deborah.
It does. He's always looking for forgiveness, but he keeps hurting the people he loves.
It's like a cycle he can't break.
It's true. And then there's Elizabeth's backstory.
Ooh, yeah. She's been through a lot.
So much hardship.
But her love for her father, even when everyone judged him.
It's powerful.
It is. It shows you the power of loyalty.
And that feeling of holding on to something, even when everyone tells you you're wrong.
Absolutely. It's like Elizabeth's story is all about that.
It is. And then her relationship with Richard.
Right. The man who leads her away from religion.
That passionate romance.
It ends in tragedy.
When he's wrongfully imprisoned.
Yeah, that's where you really see Baldwin's social justice concerns come through.
Yeah. Richard's despair, it reflects the struggles of so many Black Americans at that time.
Exactly. It's a reminder that these injustices had real consequences for people's lives.
Absolutely. And Elizabeth carries a secret from that relationship.
Right. The child she had with Richard.
Who ends up being John.
Exactly. And that hidden truth just adds another layer to the family dynamics.
It does. And in a way, it foreshadows the challenges John faces later on.
Right. Like he's destined to struggle with his identity, too.
Totally. It's like Baldwin is setting up this chain reaction.
Yeah.
Choices made in the past, having a ripple effect on the future.
Exactly. Impacting not just the people involved, but generations to come.
And that brings us back to John.
Full circle.
His struggle to figure out who he is, where he belongs.
And the legacy he's inherited.
It's like we've uncovered all these hidden roots.
Yeah.
And now we can see how they've shaped the branches that reach for the sky.
Beautiful way to put it, and it leads us right into the climax of the story.
The Terry service.
Exactly. Now that we understand John's background,
His family history.
we can really appreciate that intense scene in a whole new way.
Yeah, it really is like uncovering those hidden roots and seeing how they impact everything that grows from them.
Right, exactly. And that leads us right to the heart of it all.
The Terry service, right?
The climax of the book. And Baldwin just throws you right into the middle of it.
He really does. I keep thinking about what you said before.
Oh, yeah.
How Prayers of the Saints isn't just a side story. It's like essential to understanding John's journey.
Exactly.
And now that we've unpacked all that family history, the weight of the past,
Yeah.
we can really see how intense this scene is.
Oh, for sure.
Baldwin doesn't hold back at all.
No, he doesn't. The imagery is so powerful.
It's like the church becomes this battleground.
Yeah, a threshing floor.
Right, where John's spear is being tested.
Pushed to its absolute limits.
Exactly. And that struggle to rise.
It's not just physical.
No, it's his whole internal struggle.
His search for meaning, for connection.
Absolutely. And what I find so interesting
Yeah.
is that even after this intense experience, there's still this ambiguity.
Right. It's not a clear-cut ending.
Not at all. Like, is John really saved in the traditional sense?
It makes you wonder.
Or is this the beginning of something else?
Yeah, maybe a different kind of awakening.
Exactly, like realizing his path might be outside the church.
It's one of the things I love about Baldwin's writing.
Me too.
He doesn't give you easy answers.
Yeah.
He makes you think, makes you wrestle with these big questions right alongside John.
Right, like we're searching for a sign with him.
Exactly. But even after the Tari service,
Yeah.
there's this feeling of uncertainty that this journey's not over yet.
And the language Baldwin uses to describe how John feels.
Oh, it's so powerful.
So intense, like when he talks about being at the very bottom of darkness.
Yeah, or feeling like he's been cracked open.
It's visceral.
It is. It's almost violent.
It is. And when you think about everything he's been through,
His parents' struggles, his own.
it makes that struggle even more real.
He's carrying so much weight on his shoulders.
Yeah.
Trying to break free from all that pain.
And that line at the end when John tells Elisha, I was down in the valley, I won't never forget.
Ugh, my heart.
It's heartbreaking, but also hopeful, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
He's acknowledging the darkness, but he's also choosing to learn from it.
To use it to move forward.
Exactly. I think that's really the message of the whole book.
What do you mean?
It's about facing the hard stuff.
The complexities of life.
Right? Faith, family, identity.
Finding your own way, even when it's scary.
Exactly. It's been amazing exploring this book with you.
I've loved it.
As we wrap up this deep dive into Go Tell It on the Mountain.
Yeah.
What's one last thought you want to leave our listener with?
You know, I think John's journey going down into that darkness and then fighting to come back up, it's something we can all relate to.
It's true.
We all have those moments of doubt, of questioning, wondering what it all means.
It's part of being human.
It is, and maybe the answers aren't always clear.
Right.
But the act of searching, of wrestling with those questions,
Yeah.
that's what shapes us, helps us grow.
I love that.
It's how we find our own truth.
Beautifully said. We all have our own valleys to cross, our own mountains to climb.
Would you?
And it's in those journeys, in those struggles, that we discover who we really are.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Well, thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into James Baldwin's Go Tell It on the Mountain.
It's been a pleasure.
We've covered a lot, but I hope this has inspired you to maybe revisit the book or even discover it for the first time.
It's worth it.
There's so much to unpack in Baldwin's words.
So much to learn.
And who knows, maybe this is just the start of your own journey through his incredible work.
That would be wonderful.